Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. We have a question from YouTube user Slice of Paradise, which is a winsome YouTube screen name. And Slice of Paradise asks us, what happens if I don't respond to the employer's respondent's position statement? Question mark. Okay, so I'm going to assume you're in the EEOC, right? Because there's a lot of different agencies across the country that you could have received a position statement in. But if you received a position statement in the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, as a private employee of a private employer, not a federal employee, then generally what you are seeing is their arguments, their response, their answer to what you filed. Right, you filed a charge of discrimination, you said some bad things happened, you set those things out, and the employer put together a position statement saying, hey, here's our position on that. They would have to deny some or all, probably all of the things you said. Not all the facts you said, but all the claims you made, right? Sometimes they don't have to deny things at all because you might have pled things that are not properly pled in the EEOC, and they might just say, hey, we don't have to respond to that. That doesn't actually go before the EEOC. Fair enough. Excuse me. Now, if you choose not to draft a rebuttal, and you could use our Rebuttal Drafting 101 video to draft a rebuttal, and I do generally encourage people to draft a rebuttal. I think it is often a good exercise to engage in for a variety of reasons, including that drafting a strong rebuttal can often spur settlement. You can kind of highlight for defense counsel where defense counsel's client, her or his client, is lying to them. It's very common. Defense counsel will get a load of bullshit out of their client all the time. And they come to you and they give that position statement like, you're so full of shit. Your case is garbage, blah, 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 right? So on and so forth. And you're like, okay, let's start with point one. And you're like, it turns out plaintiff was right here. Demonstrably so. And point two, plaintiff was correct. And your client lied in point three. And your client's full of shit in point four. Point five, that doesn't look too good for your client, Mr. Defense Attorney. And point six, ooh, that's going to leave a mark, right? And you go through and your rebuttal can then spur defense counsel to go back to the client and say, hey, remember when you told me a bunch of lies and you sent me to the EEOC and I gave them a position statement that was full of bullshit that you fed me? Lies from the tablecloth, as they say. Not to quote System of a Down. But you can see how that rebuttal, where it's effective, can be incredibly valuable in pushing settlement, because that defense counsel will then go to the client and say, hey, idiots, we look like assholes. You did bad things, and you lied about it, and you got caught. We should get some money on this case. Maybe we schedule a mediation. Maybe we go with a nice offer. What can we do here, right? Excuse me. Now, the other really valuable thing about engaging the rebuttal is a lot of times I'll be speaking with the plaintiff and they'll rattle off, oh, that's not true because of this. That's not true because of this. I can show that's not true because of that. And you're like, great. Let's get that in writing. Let's get that down on paper so we can see it, because you're saying things that have a lot of logical leaps in there. Like, great example. Oh, they'll never prove that I'm late all the time. Nobody will testify to that. Okay. I mean, they got timesheets. So their position statement attaches 19 timesheets wherein you were late by your own clocked-in admission. And if your answer to that is not, those timesheets are false because of X, Y, and Z, then guess what? You're probably not going to disprove that you were late, because you probably were, right? And that doesn't mean your case is shot, but it does mean that you're only saying things because you want to say them, not because they're true. And that is a common human condition. We all do it. We all do it, right? Oh, so-and-so loves me so much because I'm so attractive. Okay, maybe. But I bet you so-and-so's got a lot of attractive people that so-and-so might, have a relationship with. That's probably not the only reason, right? That might not be why so-and-so loves you, right? Human beings say things often because they want them to be true. often what we want to be true is more valuable to us as humans than what is true. And that is true for all of us, even plaintiffs. And so sometimes people will say things. And when you try to reduce those things to the logical, simply expressed arguments in a rebuttal, it doesn't fly. And you read it and you're like, that sounds dumb. That sounds fucking dumb. That is not a good argument, right? And that's valuable too, because you might think, I crushed them. This position statement of theirs, I should ask for 30 mil. And then you do the rebuttal and you're like, that 700K, there's a little bit more risk here than I thought. Maybe 700K. Ugh. That's a reality. That's just something. I'm not like shitting on plaintiffs, except to the extent that I'm calling them humans. And as humans, we are all fallible. We like our own lies. We don't know we're lying to ourselves. I'm not saying, certainly my plaintiffs are not lying in the sense that they are knowingly telling falsehoods. But sometimes we mislead ourselves. Right? I'm never late. Come on. You get into it. You're like, well, listen, 5 minutes late isn't late. Oh, I assure you it is. Yeah. You're hourly. Yeah. You clock in at the time. You being late is you being late. They're well within their rights to have a policy that you can't be late. 5 minutes is a perfectly reasonable buffer period. If you're more than 5, you're not, this doesn't sound as good as you think it sounds. I wasn't late. I was only 5 minutes late. Okay. Those are two different things. Neither of them is awesome for your case, where the position statement is making a big issue. Like, hey, we actually didn't fire you because of discrimination. We fired you because you were late 19 times and you laughed at us and we wrote you up. I assure you, that could, in certain contexts, be a significant issue to your case. Not always, but sometimes. And going through the rebuttal, in the process of drafting the rebuttal with your attorney, and seeing how that comes out, that can be a really good reality check for you, right? So the rebuttal functionally serves as a dual-purpose reality check. You reality check the employer like, this is not going well for you. You should put more money on this case. You also reality check the plaintiff like, hey, remember all those things you said that turned out to not really logically flow? As it turns out, as we're confronted with some of the documentary evidence here, some of the paperwork, important business papers, right? Things are a little different than we thought. The $30 million demand may not make as much sense as we thought, right? And that's okay. It doesn't mean the case is bad. It just means it's time to have some hard conversations. Hey, the risk is higher than we thought. Still a good case. Still a valuable case. Still believe you were wronged. Still believe in my heart of hearts that you should receive a check at the end of this. No question. But notably, some of the things you said don't appear to be entirely accurate. And boy, am I glad we engaged in this rebuttal before we walked into a buzzsaw at trial. Right? That being said, Slaves of Paradise, if you don't value either of those things and you don't want to do a rebuttal, functionally nothing happens if you don't. You have the option to write a rebuttal. You have the option, right? And sometimes, listen, there's even circumstances in which our firm will decline the opportunity to do a rebuttal. If we know we're pulling a right to sue letter and going on to federal court, we will often decline to do a rebuttal. Why would we? We're just going to be sharing a lot of the arguments we're going to make in response to that position statement earlier than we'd otherwise have to. And often, we don't feel we need the rebuttal in those circumstances because we think that our case will be worth more at federal litigation once it's filed in federal court. And so we don't file that position statement. We don't draft the position statement. But where you don't, you do lose the reality check, that dual reality check value, right? So nothing's going to change. You're still going to get a right to sue from the EEOC. The chance that the EEOC might take up your case themselves with the DOJ might go down. But realistically, the chance they're going to do that is like under 1% anyways. So statistically speaking, not meaningful. Remember, the EEOC is largely a failed agency. They're not really funded. They don't really engage in what they're originally supposed to do. And they're basically just issuing right to sue letters on, I think, more than 99% of their cases. So unless you have attorneys who are actively doing things like arranging settlements for you, there's a good chance nothing's going to happen in the EEOC anyways. You're going to have to go into federal court. So if you choose not to do the rebuttal, well, nothing changes procedurally. You just lose the reality check process. And that's okay. If you don't need a reality check and the other side doesn't need a reality check, then why arrange for a reality check? Anyways, I like your username, Slaves of Paradise. I hope this was helpful. If it was, like, subscribe, comment down below. Share our channel so it can grow. I would love to hear some comments, some discussion about the reality check process, the rebuttal. People who've done rebuttals, was it a reality check for you, or did it strengthen how you felt about your case? Did it scare the employer? Did the employer all of a sudden come to the table when they got your rebuttal and it was like smacking them in the face and they were like, oh yeah, maybe we should have a conversation about getting this taken care of. Let's have a talk, right? I'd love to hear about all of that. I hope you're all having a great day. I'm probably in New York right now when you're seeing this, or at least freshly back from New York, so I'm not going to be thrilled with life because I don't like going to New York. Take care.